Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on a hidden force, something that's quietly chipping away at your wealth. You can think of it as a tax you pay without ever seeing a bill, and it's reshaping your financial future, whether you realize it or not.
I want you to think about your savings, all that hard-earned cash you've put aside. Now, what if I told you that a chunk of its actual value is just disappearing? Not because of a stock market crash or some thief in the night, but through a process that's perfectly legal and almost completely invisible.
To really see how this all works, let's just start with the super simple story. A story about doing what seems like the most responsible thing you could possibly do, saving your money. So let's picture this. You work hard, you do everything right, and you manage to save up $100,000 in cash, and you lock it away in a brand new high-security safe. You're not gambling it, you're not risking it in some volatile market. Nope, you're just saving it, protecting it. Okay, fast forward 10 years. A whole decade goes by. The world outside changes, but that safe, it stays sealed shut. When you finally swing open that heavy door, every single bill is there, exactly where you left it. Not a single penny is physically missing. But this is where it gets weird. This is the shock. You take that money out into the world and you realize its power is gone. The same pile of cash that could have bought an entire family home 10 years ago, well, now it can barely cover the down payment. The number is exactly the same, but its value has just evaporated. So what on earth happened? Now, most people would just say, oh, inflation happened. But you know what? That's only half the story. To really get what's going on here, we have to completely rethink how we even think about prices.
This is the question everyone asks, right? We see the price of gas, groceries, a house just creeping up, and we assume that things themselves are getting more expensive. But what if that's the completely wrong way to look at the problem?
This one idea changes everything. It reframes the entire problem. It suggests that it's not that the value of everything else is going up, it's that the value of the very thing we use to measure it, the money itself, is going down. Think about it. Money is basically just a yardstick. A dollar, a euro, whatever. It's just a unit of measurement. It's the ruler we use to price everything from a cup of coffee to a car. It's our universal ruler for economic value. Okay, so now imagine that while you were asleep last night, somebody snuck into your house and secretly shaved an inch off your yardstick. You'd wake up this morning and everything in your house would suddenly seem taller. Well, that is precisely what happens when the money supply gets bigger. The measuring tool itself is being devalued. And here's the kicker. This shrinking of the yardstick, it is not an accident. It is a feature of the system. It's a mechanism, and we can call it by its true name, the invisible tax. I mean, just look at the period between 2020 and 2022. We witnessed one of the largest and fastest expansions of the money supply in history. And what's really crucial to understand is that these trillions of dollars weren't printed on some giant press. They were literally just created with digital keystrokes, typed into existence. So how does this actually play out? Well, imagine a government needs, say, $1 trillion for some new projects. Raising taxes by that much would be political suicide. So instead, the central bank can just create that money digitally and lend it to the government. The government then gets to spend these brand new dollars at today's prices. But as that new money floods into the system, it increases the total supply. And just like with anything else, when supply goes up, the value of each individual unit goes down.
And here is the single most important takeaway. Every single dollar in your bank account just lost a tiny bit of its purchasing power to pay for that spending. It is a tax, plain and simple, paid through the dilution of your savings. But you never get a bill. There's no line item for it on your tax return. Now, this process isn't some conspiracy theory. It's a known economic concept. It's called seigniorage. Way back when, it was the profit a king made from the difference between the face value of a coin and the actual cost of the gold or silver inside it. Well, today, when the cost to create a digital dollar is basically zero, that profit is drawn directly from the purchasing power of all the other money already out there.
So this system has these massive consequences for how we all live our lives. It completely changes the relationship between working, saving, and investing. It basically forces all of us to become risk takers, whether we want to or not. Let's just look at some of the really uncomfortable math here. You might feel pretty good about your high-yield savings account that's earning 4%. But if the real rate of inflation, the rising cost of a house, of education, of healthcare, is actually 7%, you are not gaining 4%. You are losing 3% of your purchasing power every single year. It's like you're running on a treadmill that's tilted backwards. And this creates this powerful psychological trap for all of us. You get a 5% raise at work and you feel like, hey, I'm moving forward. But if your actual costs went up by 10%, you're actually 5% poorer. We're just programmed to see that bigger number in our paycheck and feel like we're winning, even when our real-world standing is actually falling behind. The ripple effects of this just change our whole society. Simply saving cash becomes a guaranteed losing game, so everyone feels this pressure to become an investor or a speculator just to try and keep up. This flood of what you could call desperation money starts chasing a return anywhere it can find one, and that can inflate massive asset bubbles. Think about the crazy swings in the stock market or the sky-high housing prices we've seen. That's partly fueled by people just trying to escape the slow erosion of their cash. And it also explains the growing interest in assets that can't just be printed out of thin air, like land or gold or even things like Bitcoin. So you have to ask yourself, why? Why is the system designed this way? Who really benefits from having a constantly shrinking yardstick? Well, the answer lies in one absolutely mind-boggling number. Over $300 trillion. That is the approximate total debt held by governments, corporations, and people around the world. It is a number so vast, it's almost impossible to even comprehend. And when you owe that much money, devaluing the currency you owe it in becomes a very, very attractive option. When you really boil it all down, sustained inflation is just a massive transfer of wealth. It takes from the lenders, and make no mistake, if you have cash in a savings account, you are a lender. And it gives to the biggest borrowers. And who are they? Typically large institutions and governments. By devaluing the currency, they get to pay back their enormous debts with cheaper, less valuable money down the road. Your loss is literally their gain. And this really brings us full circle. We live our lives chasing numbers on a screen, in our bank accounts, on our pay stubs, but we almost never stop to question the stability of the yardstick that's measuring it all in the first place. So that leaves us with one final and kind of provocative question. If this invisible tax is one of the key engines keeping this whole global debt system afloat, what do you think would happen if that engine just suddenly stopped?